Welcome to Traveled, where we take a journey to a specific region so you discover what makes this part of the world so unique. Before we get rolling with our guest this week, I wanted to share the love with our Traveled sponsor. This podcast is powered by Swing Outdoors, the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and Yellowstone Teton territory. From the Henry's Fork to the South Fork of the Snake and all the high alpine lakes and streams in between, Yellowstone Teton territory provides anglers and other outdoor enthusiasts with all the information they need to plan their next big trip. You can visit wetflyswing.com/Teton right now to get the full list of outfitters, lodges, fly shops, and all kinds of inspiration to get you started on your next trip to eastern Idaho. That's Teton, Teton, wetflyswing.com/Teton. Let's do it. Let's jump in and find out where that road less traveled is going to lead us today. How you doing, Corby?
We're doing great. How are you today, Dave?
Great. It's really great to have you on here. We've been doing a lot of cool stuff out in your neck of the woods. We've had a number of episodes on, fly fishing, the rivers, and now we're starting to get into like lake fishing. We've got a great one of our gurus, Phil Roy, is coming out there. We've got some local folks that are helping put together this trip, and it looks like you're going to be the place that we're heading to do our, have our luxury accommodations. And I've heard a lot about what you have going, but let's dig into this because we're going to talk about everything you have going now. I want to hear a little bit on the history of the lodge because I know there's a lot of that history. Can you first talk about who you are and what your connection is to the lodge there?
Yeah, so we're talking about the, as I referred to it, the historic Phillips Lodge. And the lodge was built basically in the 20s, kind of through the Great Depression. Part of the works projects there built the reservoir and a bunch of different things. And Harry Phillips ended up being the owner and thus the name Phillips Lodge. We bought the lodge in 1997. It came along with 15 acres of land. And at the time it was the lodge was in, a little bit run down, but in fair shape for being, almost 100 years old. And it had a few outbuildings. But as we researched the property had a grandfathered in subdivision. And so we sat down, and I remember getting a call. I was actually living up in Seattle area. And I get a call from my dad, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? He's like, oh, we're going to build log cabins. And I'm like, what do you know about that? Absolutely nothing. It's going to be beautiful. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And ended up subsequently moving to help build a bunch of log cabins. So we've built 20 of the main units. And then as we built the larger units, we built some kind of more, overnight, what we call a smaller unit. They're still about 600 square feet and, 2 beds, full bath. And so we built those along the ways, and we have 26 total units now that surround the lodge.
Wow.
And then we inherited one of the iconic lodges of the greater Yellowstone area, and being the stewards of that, is a lot of responsibility as anybody that's tried to restore a lodge knows. So yeah. you find some interesting things in the attic. So
right. What was one interesting thing you would find in that old lodge?
I think from my perspective, I'm a real people person, and so the stories people tell. So one of my favorite stories, this lady comes barreling in one day, just sunny afternoon, whatever it was, mid-August, right about this time kind of thing, and she pulls this huge, it must have been one of those like old school LTD, just the longest, 70s car, 60s car you've ever seen. And she was in her 90s. And she's still driving this thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did she not sideswipe 10 people? What's going on? And she came in and she was just dressed to the nines, just all prim and proper. And she starts telling us that she worked there when she was a teenager. And I'm like, well, man, that's got to be like right when this place was like built. And there, every lodge I think up there is either burnt down or almost burnt down, for better or worse. And so I tried to get some details, and she, in her exact quote was, young man, I don't remember much. I just remember it was fun. And the lodge was known as truly like a dance till dawn, bar. So it was part of 7 bars, and then there were 2 sportsman bars, so 9 liquor licenses that were established in that area. And so Island Park itself is about 1,000 feet wide, the original city, and it was 500 feet of either side of the original Yellowstone Highway, and then it was some odd miles long, like 27 miles long. And so like our property was actually half in, half out of the original city limits. So as we went to develop, we incorporated in, and and so the city's grown and whatnot. But Island Park will never be a Jackson Hole or a Sun Valley because it's 27 miles long and it's 1,000 feet wide. So there's no way to develop in, in that kind of a corridor. Anything that will ever grow in that magnitude. So it's always going to be real mom and pop. And that's what we found. It took us years before the local population accepted us. All those kind of stories you hear about moving to someone else's, town, so to speak. But it's been such a beautiful blessing for our family and so rich history. So like this lady, right? She was part of that era of just bands dancing, and you can still see on the wood floor like where they danced and how like we've tried to restore it, but we've never replaced it. And it was a true throw the sawdust on the ground and dance till dawn. And grown men like myself would come in and say, oh, it's so nice to be on this side of the windows. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, well, when we were little kids, we had to just sit in the car while mom and dad danced all night long in the
Right.
lot. And so now they're on the other side of the windows, right? Actually having dinner and whatnot. When we bought the lodge, we transformed the main salon, the bar, basically into a just dining room. So we have the bar open with the food, and it's more of just a nice historic, lodge than the nitty gritty bar that we bought. But
Yeah.
that's all right, I guess.
That's cool. So the Island Park, and it is interesting because we had at least one other guest talk about that story of how it was created. And so when was, and Island Park is actually, it is a city officially?
Yeah, yeah, it's an official city.
So it's official city, but it's got this unique thing where it's super, not very wide and 27 miles long. And what was the thinking there? Like these were people back in that day that were traveling. I mean, why create that little strip along the highway? It was just a place to here's some bars, some places to hang out. Like, do you know that history?
Well, so I mean, I have my version that I was told, right? And I am from the Latter-day Saint faith or the Mormon, heritage, right? So I feel I'm well within my rights to say, yeah, it was a dry county
Oh, right.
and people wanted someplace to go to have a good time. And so you went up the hill and what it's like Vegas, right? What
Yeah.
happens in Vegas gets to stay in
Right.
Vegas. So you went up the hill and we had one lady, she told us that yeah, I remember my mom and dad, the pastor told them, and I don't know what faith they were, right? So a pastor could have been any faith, right? Said, y'all can go to that Phillips Lodge on Saturday nights, or you can come to church on Sundays, but you need to stop trying to do both.
Right. That's awesome.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the intent there was, was to recreate. Now the area originally started being habitated through the railroad. So the railroad would come through, and it crosses the Henry's Fork of the Snake River just between Big Springs and what is now Max Inn or the highway area, right, where Highway 20 goes across. And the railroad bridge is still there. You can take UTVs and snowmobiles over it or just walk over it. It's a beautiful little spot just down from the headwaters of the Henry's Fork, which is Big Springs. So we go there all the time, have some great pictures of it. It's a iconic spot in the area. And so the railroad would stop there, the train would stop, and people would get out and they'd just camp along the river. And then when the train came back, they'd jump back on and go back home. It eventually stopped at West Yellowstone, and then people got on the stagecoach and went into the park if they were traveling that far. So, like, for example, my dad, he's a local Utah, born native down in the Rexburg Ryrie area, just an hour south of Island Park. And for him, a whole vacation would be going up to Island Park and just stopping at the different fishing holes. You'd fish the Warm Springs area, then you'd fish the ranch, and then you'd work your way through the Box Canyon, Coffee Pot Rapids, like different iconic places where they would go fishing. So for him, that was one of the motivators. We always vacationed there as children because he vacationed there as a child. And then, like I said, in the winter of '97, he sees a little ad for, Phillips Lodge for sale, and knew about it because his uncle had a home down the road. So we had been by there to say hi on one of our vacations. And next thing you know, we got a full-fledged resort, and
Wow.
it's almost 30 years later, so time flies when you're building cabins, and and hosting thousands of different people from all over the world. It's such, like I said, it's just such a beautiful opportunity to grow your person with everybody else that comes to say hi.
Yeah. And that's why I guess people are obviously coming there because of the area, just like we're coming there. So currently, over the last, whatever few years, you have a diversity of people. Like, describe the, people that are coming there. Like, who are these? Just a diversity of people around the country, around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yellowstone is, up there with Las Vegas, Disneyland, Disney World, right? Like it's truly people's dream to see, and being in such proximity, but having such nice lodging available. Our floodgates are opened all summer long with a very diverse. I think we've probably had somebody from about every country. We haven't kept tracks, but legitimately, before the pandemic, the Chinese people were probably one of our largest customers. Their sons would be in school, and they would come over and do just a tour of the United States, and Yellowstone was always on the spot. We have a lot of European folks that will come in and stay, and then of course the Western United States is massive. So probably the Western United States is 60-70% of our population are guests, right? But the diversity, and just, again, people coming in, and my dad got real good at Google Translate, because
Yeah.
not,
Right.
not everybody's speaking English, and he's like, this is great, man. I
Right.
just speak in my phone, and it tells me what these guys are needing. And yeah, it's been really cool. So we use Airbnb and other, VRBO, and all those avenues to get people in. And then obviously, we have a really strong, like, we come up this time every year, and they just book the cabin. They don't need to own a cabin themselves. They just book ours. And we have standing reservations with a really solid, clientele list. So it's, like I said, it's a little bit of both. I have the guys that I'll see, once a year or twice a year, and I have the people I see one time, and I can remember them all. The guys from Florida, that this is a cool story, to give you an idea. So they come in from Florida, they've never seen snow. They come in around Mother's Day, so we're still getting snow, in the area. Like, it's a beautiful time. I love that time of year, because you have very little park activity. The fishing is now open everywhere but the ranch, I believe, if I'm up to my new fishing guide rules. But so you can really get out and explore, and you might get a snowstorm, and you might get like 7-degree, sunshine. You just don't know, right? So it's just that time where you can kind of get all the seasons in a day. And so this lady comes back, and there's just a huge dent in their rental car.
Hmm.
And I am looking at her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did you guys get in an accident? And she looks at me, and she has the funniest look. And I'm like, I have no idea how to read this look, right? And she
Yeah.
goes, I just had to touch it. And I was like, you mean the buffalo? Because it was instantly new, like,
Right.
what happened. So the buffalo would be standing next to your car. She rubs the buffalo's head or whatever, or rump. It kicks the door in and runs off.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, subsequently, like, I'll never forget that family, right? Like who, who gets their door kicked in by a buffalo,
That's
right?
pretty amazing, because I've been there. I remember last time we were there, we had a buffalo that, yeah, walked right by our car. And I thought the same thing. I was like, man, I could touch this thing, but
Oh yeah. Well,
but
she
you
did.
definitely don't want to do that.
She went for the petting zoo, option, but
Right, right. Not a good idea.
obviously not condoning petting or touching any of the animals.
No, definitely don't want to do that. So this is cool because, I mean, yeah, you guys have this really cool lodge. I want to dig more into, more about the lodge. But what is so you've got a large reservoir or lake right next to you. What is that? What is that lake I guess to the east?
Yeah, so Island Park Reservoir, and it sits on the Henry's Fork of the Snake River. And they dammed up just above what people refer to as the Box Canyon. So if you're going to float for like fishing or recreational purposes, that area, you get in just below the dam there. There's an area to jump in. And the reservoir itself, it follows like a fish hook. It follows the river. So the river does kind of a fish hook, and they put the dam right at the far end of the hook before it goes up, but there is like a section that goes up. And then there's a massive floodplain that goes out to the west that just kind of filled in a valley, basically the Shotgun Valley, Sheridan, out towards Sheridan Ranch. It's a beautiful reservoir, full recreation available. The waters are very heavily nutrient rich. And so the fishing is great. There's still lake salmon that spawn. I mean, it's just an amazing ecosystem up there. And so the reservoir itself is one of those top of the line reservoirs,
Yeah.
right? Like the water starts like a couple miles up the street, basically.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, this is high quality.
yeah, it's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and what is the elk on Elk Creek Ranch, the right near you, that little, what is that?
So about the same time they were building the Phillips Lodge, the Elk Creek Ranch was established, and that's actually about a 500-acre plot of land, give or take a few acres, and they have basically a dam that they built, right, with its own gates and stuff. So they built a causeway, or whatever you want.
So that's Elk Creek. That's like Elk Creek Reservoir or something like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, it's a, I want to say it's probably about a 20-30 acre, lake, right? Like small pond lake, however, and then it feeds the Elk Creek River right there, then goes into the Buffalo River that then goes into the Henry's Fork. So one of the reasons why they call Island Park, there's two theories around it, going back to kind of that history side of it. And the one is that as the stagecoach and railroad went through, they had to make so many bridges that they would camp on what they would call islands, because there's just springs and rivers coming throughout the whole area, right? And through the area. So that was one of the ideas. And then the other idea where the islands were kind of the volcanic tufts where the trees couldn't grow, so they could get, protection and see. So I think the combination, right? You're looking for dry land, and you're looking
Yep.
for someplace where you were, able to, fend off any unwanted guests, so to speak. But we're basically in the, in the mini Yellowstone caldera, right? We're in what they call the Henry's Fork caldera. So Island Park was a volcano 1.3 million years ago. Yellowstone 700,000 years ago, roughly, when it went off, and so we're part of that ecosystem. And then you have the Continental Divide to the north and basically east, and then Yellowstone right to the east. So like from the lodge, for example, if you could go in a straight line, you could hit Old Faithful Lodge, and we're almost on the same, parallel, right? We're almost parallel to each other. So you could hit Old Faithful Lodge in like a 25-minute drive
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
versus going up and around. So you're right there, you're in the literally what Yellowstone is, we were a million years ago kind of a thing. And that ridge is still there. So you can be, if you're fishing the lake, or on the reservoir, if you're fishing in the river system, you're either on one side or the other of that hump, basically, of the crater. So it's pretty, but it's like, it's like 15 miles across. So it's not,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is really
you
cool.
just think it's a mountain range, and then you read a little sign that goes, "This is actually an ancient volcano. Congratulations, you're standing in the middle of it." And you're like, wait a minute, what?
Right. This is great. No, I love the history, and the geology and stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
And so that paints the picture a little bit, and we'll dig probably more into this as we go. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be heading out in probably late June, July to fish a bunch of lakes in that area. And we've talked about, like I said, we've talked about the Henry's Fork. We're actually doing a trip out there to the South Fork as well to fish the streams. But this trip specifically is going to be the lakes. And your lodge is in a really perfect spot because, I mean, you're within minutes of all these cool reservoirs and lakes. And so, but you also have the history, which is cool. I'm excited. So paint that picture. Let's say we're coming in there in late June, early July. What is that lodge? We're walking up to it. You've got the old historic. Paint the picture of what we can expect for what we first see, and then what it's like if we're going to be staying there for a few days.
So the lodge itself sits right on the main road. we're just about a quarter mile off the main highway. So it's an easy, you see the sign, you turn and drive kind of down to the lodge. It's actually, for me, it's super nostalgic. Whenever I drive down that road, if it was 10 minutes ago that I left, or it's been a week because I was gone or something, it has a couple rolls. So it's the old highway. It's the remnants of the old highway. So they didn't use as much dynamite back in the day. So
Yeah.
it's, just kind of rolls with the landscape. And so you kind of come up over the last little roll. And again, these are just like a 10-second, to go over type roll, right? Not a hill or anything, but and then you see the lodge. And as you pull in, you'll see the lights on at the restaurant. If it's evening, if it's daytime, you'll just see the lodge. We have our welcome desk right there, our office right there in the corner of the lodge. So you come in, you're hungry, you sit down, take a bite, take a load off, grab a drink. You're not hungry, get up to your cabin. And then the cabins all sit behind the lodge and up in the trees. That's why we call it the pines. So the cabins are incredibly private, even though they're clustered for ease of, maintaining everything, right, with a single entity crew, that they don't have to drive a truck a half mile to get to the next location. So you're very private. Everything's full log construction between the lodge and the cabins. You've got private hot tubs on the cabin. So you're in the middle of nowhere, like rustic, but you have all the amenities you need. And I guess that's where, you go back to being the stewards of this property, right? This property's hosted gatherings for almost 100 years. Probably we're, right there on 100 years old. And so that call to that's what we do. That's who we are,
Right.
And so there's a lot of pride in there. Through the pandemic, we created a touchless check-in because, nobody knew what you're supposed to do. And again, not to get into any right or wrongs, just that was, the new standard, right? So the nice thing about that is it's carried over. So now planes get delayed, like things happen, no big deal, right? With a text message or a quick communication, we know you're coming late. Everything will be sitting out for you. You'll have a beautiful map, a little packet with your name on it. You grab your packet and you drive up to your cabin. So it's really become, with technology and everything, a real seamless from the lodge to your home, your log home, right?
Yeah.
I should call it a home versus a cabin. And so that again, that's just such a privilege to be able to share that with people. Because I don't know about you, but growing up as a child, if I was ever in Old Faithful Lodge or any of these iconic lodges, I just felt like I was in something that was on purpose and was meant to be. And you get the same feeling, these are miniature lodges basically. And you just have that feeling of, yep, I'm here. I have one buddy. He actually owns a really, really high-line hotel in Park City. And there's a couple of his staff members, his, core guys that have been up to our place. And he's like, I don't know what it is about that lodge, but every time they come back, they are so happy. So can I just send them? I'm like, yeah, give me a few nights at your Park City place. No big deal, right? So
yeah, let's do a trade, right?
So he, and he does, and we see his guys, twice a year, and he's like, yeah, it just recharges their batteries, and it's our off season, their off season, so it works great for everybody.
It's really cool. You can look at it. I will put some links or photos in the show notes for this too, so people can take a look. But yeah, these lodges are really spectacular. They're log cabins, and the places you're talking about are beautiful. And I've also heard that you guys have some pretty amazing food as well. So is that something, if we had a group coming there to do some fishing, we arrive, how's that look? Do you guys cover everything? Are you going to cover food, all that stuff?
Yeah. Depending on the party, we just set it up, on an individual basis on, hey, what do you need and what works for you? And it's a nice thing about Island Park. I mean, competition is, for some people it's fearful. For us, it's just enjoyable, right? That Island Park is growing. Again, it'll never be big. It's like 400 people or something is the official signage you come in says like 287.
Right.
I think there's probably about 400 or 500 people that call Island Park home, whether they're seasonal or not. Maybe you get up, if you include seasonal folks that only come summers, maybe you get up near 1,000 of like a full-time resident, I live here for several months kind of category. And so it's just this small oyster basically of a place. And so the nice thing is you don't have to do everything there, but if you need to or want to, that's your options. And it's pretty fun to see some of the growth as we grow. Other things have grown. And then it's also nice just to, like you said, you walk into this lodge and you know that you're someplace, beautiful. Even we had Gordon Ramsay come up. He did one of his shows up there on a hotel. His I can't remember what the it wasn't the kitchen, Hell's
Oh,
Kitchen. It was
right.
like hotel or whatever. And he stayed with us, and we were able to let him come into the lodge. And I'm waiting for him to like do his thing and like critique everything, and it was awesome. He was like, oh man, this is beautiful. And we take him back to the cabin, and we got talking about the reality of grizzly bears, and we're in grizzly country. And he's like a real grizzly bear, right? And he's using some colorful language. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, like we have grizzly bear walking through here all the time, bro. Like, and he's like, and like they could come through that door. I'm like, they could come through anything. If like a grizzly bear wants to get in, he's getting in, man. There's not a deadbolt that keeps a grizzly bear out.
You guys see plenty of grizzly bears around there?
Yeah, we have a thriving population of grizzly bear, wolf, wildlife in the area.
Nice.
They don't let the buffalo come over. They actually keep the buffalo in Yellowstone and a few special places near the park. But everything else, we probably have more moose, for example, because of our geography with all the rivers and streams than you would ever see in Yellowstone and the surrounding area. But yeah, it's awesome. But that was that was really fun to truly one of the most famous chefs in the world is eating at our lodge. And again, it wasn't a critique event; it was a fun event. And he had that spirit. And he's like, "This is just such a beautiful place. I got to bring my family, and whatnot." So
Right. God, that's really cool. Yeah. So when we're up there, yeah, we're out there fishing the lakes. We might have a chance to see a grizzly, a moose, a wolf, or even, right. I mean, that's pretty.
absolutely, I've seen like moose. I would be shocked if you didn't either see a moose or come near it. Right. Legitimately, the wolf and the grizzly bear, obviously they're the more exotic, right? Endangered species, all that fun stuff, but you hear them all the time. You'll hear those wolf, and there's the Yellowstone packs, and then there's they don't really exist, but they're there, Idaho
Yeah,
packs. there's there's all sorts of wildlife.
that's
So
really
we
cool.
had a couple lodge dogs, and I'm pretty sure we had a big husky, and he passed along a few years ago. But he was iconic personality, right? Fit right in, and I'm pretty sure he tussled with something. I doubt it was a wolf because I think a wolf probably would have taken him. It could have been some coyotes, but he came back one night and he was
Hmm.
he was all mad at it's like what you been into, buddy? You okay?
Right.
He didn't want to go outside for a few days. He was like, yeah, I'm good, dude. I'm chilling.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's cool, man. I love that. I love that you're out. I mean, yeah, you're in the middle of essentially you are in the Yellowstone, like you said, the greater Yellowstone area. So you got a chance to see everything. On the cabins, are there different sizes? Are these like multiple people are staying in a cabin, like families? How big are these cabins?
Yeah, so the original 20 that we built are roughly 1,000 square feet on the main floor, and then they have about a 600 square foot loft.
Oh wow. So yeah, they're good size.
Yeah, you're it's a log home. So you have two bedrooms in the back of the home, a full bath with like a washer and dryer, full kitchen, and then kind of a living room dining nook along the front of it. And then you have a three-quarter loft. So a third of the loft is kind of open, that vaulted ceiling, 2 stories high, beautiful windows, see the pine trees swaying, gas fireplace. And then in the loft, we have two versions of the loft. So we have a kind of open loft where there's a second bathroom and then two queen beds, but it's kind of, by distance, it's private to below, but it's not walled in. And then as we were designing them, we were like, what if we walled that in and made like a master suite up there? And then sure enough, we did. My brother kind of designed that layout. So we have about half of them are the open loft, and then we have a private loft. So we call it a 3 bedroom because it creates kind of a third bedroom. So every unit has 4 beds of that style. And then you either have the open loft or the private loft. So easily two families can be in these cabins comfortably.
Oh wow.
We've done like corporate events where they'll put, these three or two or three or four people because, everybody's got their own bed together type stuff. So again, it's a little different than hotel rooms, but that, we didn't build hotels. That's why. Every cabin has a private hot tub out front, barbecue grills. So you have, again, you have pretty much everything you need to enjoy wireless internet, satellite TV if there's a special game that's coming on that, everybody needs to see. Or as my wife makes me do when we're on vacation there, like we sometimes we'll stay in the cabins, on the off season, right? And just
Sure.
take our own little time and
Take your own stay vacation, right?
she unplugs that little wireless thing. It's crazy, huh?
So basically, let's just say we were coming there. We had, say, 6 to 10, clients that were coming in to fish, and then we had, there was the guides that are coming there, and maybe me and a couple other people. So, we might have, say, 11 to 15 people. How would that be split up? How would you recommend that we, to make that as comfortable for the clients? How would you think that might look?
Yeah, so if you need real privacy, so we have 5 one-bedroom cabins.
Oh, okay.
They have 2 queen beds. They have a kitchenette versus a full kitchen. So as we were building the larger cabins, we basically replaced. We had a bunch of cabins that were just sitting on dirt, and we basically have replaced half of those with a foundational unit that can be here for hundreds of years, basically. So we have a basically one bed, full bath, little loft area, and then again a sitting area, private hot tub, fireplace. So again, it's about 600 square feet. So depending on when you're coming and what you need, we're gonna do okay. These guys kind of need their own space. Great. Me and the guides, we can just be in one room because we know each other or we're comfortable in that space. So you're gonna profile your guests in a positive way, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk to them.
That's a catchphrase, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, that's what we'll do. Yeah, we will definitely. I think we'll see who's coming and who needs single occupancy versus double occupancy, and then we'll make it work. So that's great. So I mean, this seems like definitely this is luxury stuff. People can have different levels, and then we're gonna have the food because at the lodge you guys actually have like this is all full on. Or would we be coming in for dinners in the actual the old historic lodge to eat dinner there?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
that's my plan. Have a few drinks, right? Kill the day the right way.
That's right. No, this is what we've been. We're just putting together now. But this is the week that we're doing now. This Stillwater week is really cool because we have Phil Roy, who's our guide. He's one of our guides who's going to be really teaching, and then we've got some other folks that are going to be there helping out. But yeah, this is what it's all about because we've been doing these trips around the country, and it's critical. We find that even when the fishing isn't, it's fishing, right, isn't the best, having that really experience that you're talking about with the great food is something that really makes the trip like over the top, even when the fishing's not good. Do you feel like, that's something that, like separates you from kind of some of the other places out there? Or what do you think is the one thing that really separates you guys?
I would say it's that we stayed true to what the intent, the original owner, Harry Phillips, he did those, that subdivision, talking with his grandson, who still has some property next to us. He'll say things like, this was grandpa's vision, right? And he in turn is quite old now, right? So we're talking a generation that's passing. And I think when you do that, when you don't go greed, but you go for quality, it reciprocates itself. It's pretty dang hard to go there and not have, a top 10 experience. And it's not because it's a Ritz Carlton, right? I
No.
mean, look, dude, there's 400 locals, right? Like,
Yeah.
keeping a good chef around, keeping, things tidy, I mean, like when things break, like I know how to fix a lot of things. I am not mechanically inclined. So it's that kind of, I think my dad and mom were pretty inspired, I believe, quite honestly, and they kept it true to what the intent was. And in that, I think that it just fits, things just fit, and being a little vulnerable, right? We got some derelict cabins that we just need to get into, and people because they can't see the actual cabins, right? These are the ones that are left over from 100 years ago. And some of them we just got stuff stored in and we got a metal roof on it, but it's leaning a little bit, but it's like, hey, like it works, right?
That's
And
cool.
so, and so sometimes, we've had guests like play tricks on their friends or whatever, like it's, but
Oh yeah, like here's your cabin.
like, yeah, here you go. And they're just like, what, like, what are you doing to me? But I think again, once you, smell the dirt, like that base level of, the crushed pine needles and, it just, one of those mountain thunderstorms just rolled through and everything's just like a potpourri basically, right? You're just like, you're getting everything in you and, the dew's dripping off of a pine needle and the sun's catching it just right. And you just know that that moment is eternal. Like that moment never leaves your person. And so, yeah, like I expect you guys to catch some great fish and have great success. And I think that there's a few people out there that only go for the fishing, but most people that go explore the Henry's Fork, explore, Island Park Reservoir, Henry's Lake, Ebgen Lake, right up to just north of us, they're there for a lot more reasons.
Yeah.
And I believe it's just a sacred place, with Yellowstone and the whole geological thing. I just think it's a really special place. And I have my own experiences to believe that, it's not if you guys come up there, you're going to have another place where you're like, wow, 20 years from now, you're like, remember that trip to
Yeah.
the Pines, man? Like we got, hopefully it's not 20 years later that you're, finally coming back, but you get the idea of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the plan is to do this annually, especially when we get up there, and we're going to be talking about all week here because this is our Stillwater week. So, like I said, we're going to have Phil come on. I think we're going to do a conservation episode with one of the groups in that area. I think it's going to be the Henry's Lake Foundation.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
going to talk about some of the cool stuff they're doing. So, we've been doing this program up there, and it's been really awesome because I've been there a number of times just in the Yellowstone area, and yeah, I mean it's obviously it's one of the most unique places in the world.
Yeah, I come across, so one of my other jobs is skiing. I'm a
Oh, cool.
decorated ski instructor and lifelong, advocate. And I'll talk to people and they're like, whoa, wait, you have multiple cabins? Like not just a cabin, you have multiple cabins near the Henry's Fork. Why, like, let's go. Right. So,
Yeah.
the two sports follow each other pretty iconically,
Yeah.
but like I said, from my perspective, it's really bigger than that, but that's why the Henry's Fork is so renowned. Yeah, the fishing's incredible. I mean, it really is. No matter where you go there, it's also just that it's this place that the way it's laid out, right? For better or worse, when they decided to make a town that was 25 miles long and 1,000 feet wide,
Yeah.
just to have some bars, right? And get drunk. Like whether that was inspired or not, right? Depending
Yeah.
on where you want to go with it.
And your bar was one of the, I mean, was yours one of the, out of the 7 original ones or whatever it was, how many are still there?
Yeah, so currently there's Trout Hunter Lodge, which is down to the south. Beautiful, great people, right?
Yep.
World renowned guiding crew there. Across the street from them is where Henry's Fork Anglers, also Lawson and renowned pioneers of the area. They own 2 bars. They actually own the bar next to them, which is the A bar, which is closed currently. Hasn't been open for years, but they have 2 of the licenses as far as I know. Then there's the Ponds Lodge, which is just down the road from us, our lodge, and then Max Inn, I believe, had something, but Max Inn itself burned down.
Oh,
So
wow.
currently they built a Marriott there, Envoy Marriott, one of their brands. They have a bar, but I don't believe they have one of the licenses. They have like more of just, they don't have the liquor license part of it. And then there's 2 private clubs. The North Fork, I believe, has one of those sportsman's deals. And then going up into the north by Henry's Lake, there was Sunset Village, which was one of them. And that building, when we bought the lodge, that building was kind of on the way down. And I believe that's one of the licenses somebody else has taken. But like I said, there's not 5 more,
No.
ever. So I think, and just lodges, like our lodge luckily, quite frankly, it was built, it's like on two different foundation, kind of like you kind of, it was built in like stages. So you have like,
Hmm.
you have some, some character there.
Oh yeah.
It was built on a foundation. So it's at least a few feet out of the ground level, and the logs are, maintaining themselves, but it's a full log, a D log, building. And it's just, I lived upstairs in the lodge for 10 years of my life before I got married and whatnot. And to say that the spirits are lively there is an understatement, bro.
Oh
Like
really?
that place has its it has its history, and not like haunted or anything, but just like, if we have a band play, there's way more people like there than what you see, right? Like there's an energy that just like instantly lights up, because in the fall they used to have the big harvest, balls. We have a few pictures as you walk through the lodge, you'll see them of back in the day when they had the big, they do a pit barbecue, and just have the whole town basically come out. And so I think that's what you're trying to carry on, right? You're trying to make a living, you're trying to be good with the land, good stewards, but you're also making sure that somebody, like my daughters are 5 and 3, that they bring their children there because there was some reason to go there.
Right. You're keeping the going.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty powerful. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Love the history. So, well, let's just take it. I mean, I think we're, like I said, we're planning on coming there. I think it might even be after 4th of July. Maybe let's just say it's the next weekend. So if we were coming in on, say, a Thursday night, so we roll up, let's just kind of talk about that a little bit. We roll in. Do we roll up to the Phillips, the main lodge first? Is that the first stop? Or you said there's check-in without even doing that?
Yeah, you're gonna check in there again, depending on the time. So typically we keep office hours till about 6ish, 5 or 6. We try to just communicate to every party, because, like I said, some parties aren't getting there till midnight, and that's okay too,
Yeah.
right? So let's say you guys arrive about 4 o'clock, right? You're gonna come in the office. We're gonna kind of welcome you, make sure everything's good, make sure we know where parties are going, how to park, how to, make sure how to take care of your garbage, because we are in bear, world grizzly country. So we have bear proof containers. You can't just leave it on the porch, right? You got to in the cabin, or in the, in the bear proof containers kind of thing.
Yeah. What are the bear proof? Are these metal big containers that are out there, the garbage can things?
Yeah, they're like your big dumpster, but instead of the easy flip plastics, they have like a huge steel lid on them, and then they have like the handles that the bear can't manipulate. He can still move that sucker around, like every once in a while, because they just smell it, so they're like, oh yeah, that smells good, and they give it a couple pushes, and they'll, like, it'll be kitty wampus, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you see these big paw marks, and then the claws like 3 inches further, you'll see like the little pokes where the claw was actually, touching the dusty side of the garbage can, and you're like, oh, so he's big.
Right. Wow.
But yeah, so they wander in, they push around a little bit, and then they wander, to the next food source or next smell they have in their, in their nostrils, basically. But basically, we'll give you the 411 of, hey, this is, what you do, this is what you need. And in your group's case, where we're going to be fairly, hosting on a really larger level, we're going to, go over times and a little bit with you. We probably already talked about it, so we won't do too much of that. We'll get everybody up to the cabin, walk you through how everything works. The reality is in July, you still might need to use the fireplace.
Cool.
Because it can get cold at night. The cabins, they're insulated log unit. Basically, how the log cabin works is, as you heat up the log, it radiates the heat back, so they're super efficient. That's why they used them for so long, and they kept people relatively comfortable and alive for so long. And so, vice versa, in the summertime, you want to keep it cold. So it comes with the warning of, it's better just to let your cabin get really cold, because when it is 85 in the mountains, it feels like it's 100 sometimes. So we go over that. Here's your hot tub, right? Here's how it works. Here's where you're gonna find stuff, and then basically you guys just chill.
Yeah, then we chill. Then is there a typical, like, a dinner time bell, so people come in and eat dinner, or is it more of like restaurant whenever you want to come in?
We're a restaurant, so we're open to the public as well. Typically, we do have large groups. We can host about 50 comfortable 50 to 60 people in the lodge. So we do have groups that'll rent the whole, lodge out for an evening, but that's on occasion. That's not on a normal stuff. So yeah. So hey guys, we got a reservation for 7:30. It's 4:30 right now. Corby, where's a couple places we can see? Well, dude, you should just go up to Big Springs and you can see the spawning area of the most beautiful, iconic spring in North America, quite frankly.
Is that with the little cabin, the little guy that?
Yeah, Johnny Sack cabin,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
there's a cool story about that too. There's a rumor out there that Estelle Phillips and Johnny Sack were better than friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
There you go. This is perfect.
I got that from a hardcore local. So
Are there any small cabins on the Phillips on your ranch there? Any of those tiny cabins, or did Johnny have any? He wasn't helping build any of the cabins at your place.
no, his cabin's so amazing. So definitely like if you can, because I mean I'm not a great fisherman, but I know like there's a certain time where you're like, yeah, it's just not worth being
Yeah.
out here, right? So whenever that time is, right,
Yep.
you could go in the summertime. So kind of between Memorial Day and Labor Day, you can actually tour the cabin. But he did like his own veneer little strips. I mean, he was like a 4'9" German,
Yep.
homesteader, and he really did some special stuff with that little cabin. He had a water wheel that gave him pumped water up to the cabin, gave him I think rudimentary electricity for the time and stuff. So it's a pretty amazing little spot, and you just look around like, dude, somebody actually lived here? Like, this is silly, right? Like, this is so pristine. But yeah, so hey, go up to Big Springs. You're not going to go fishing right now. We'll see you, in an hour for dinner kind of thing. You also have Harriman State Park in Mesa Falls to the south, which again, Harriman's connected to the ranch section of the Henry's Fork. And then Mesa Falls is the largest unaltered or, molested waterfall in the Snake River system. And so it's about 100 feet high, a little over 100 feet high, and about 150
Wow.
wide. So it's a
Huge.
absolute must go see. And cool story about that section. So there's two falls. There's Upper Falls and Lower Falls, and they're both too big for fish to go up, right? Fish can actually go over the falls and survive, apparently. I don't know, like how many would survive, right?
Right.
But my brother and I were hiking the because there's some fisherman access and you can get down in between them. And so we follow a fisherman down there as we're exploring the area. And it was one of our first summers up there, owning the lodge, and this osprey comes down and takes a fish and, goes. And as I learned the geology, I'm like, so that fish, like for at least a couple thousand years, right? We don't know exactly when the earthquake happened that shifted these two waterfalls. But it's been a while, right? Like
Yeah.
they're not new waterfalls. It's like, so that fish and his buddies have been like just in this section for how many thousands of years, right? And I think, again, to me, that's why I go fish, right? That's why I get out in nature, is because I look and I realize how small we are, but then how big we are at the same time, right?
Exactly.
So like our footprint is an eternal footprint, in my opinion. And watching that, osprey come down, take that fish, and he just goes up in a latrine, starts, having lunch, and I'm like, dude, that is really cool.
Man, amazing. Yeah, this is going to be great. Yeah, I'm excited to get out there because I think, yeah, you offer, that cool, you know what I mean? It's like that luxury, but at the same time, it's kind of rustic too, a little bit, right? I mean, the cabins, but I mean, I love a good wood stove, right? So this is going to be really awesome. And we're, like we said, we're going to come in. It's probably going to be maybe 4 nights there. So we'll probably be, fishing all day. We'll come back. We'll probably have a session where we do our school, our fly fishing school at one of the, one of the cabins, one of the bigger cabins. And then we'll go out and fish and come back and have food and just enjoy everything. So this is all great. I'm glad you painted this picture. So you mentioned a few things if we were coming up there. What else would you be hitting as far as tourists? I mean, I guess you've already talked about a few of them, but anything else we'd want to make sure to hit if we go to that area, other than obviously Yellowstone Park?
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, you got Grand Teton National Park.
Oh, yeah. How far is that away?
So you're about an hour and a half. It's 90 miles to Jackson Hole, like city center. And so, yeah, I mean, you could spend 4 days not fish at all and not get bored and not see the same place, right?
Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't go there. That's the thing. We've only got actually 3 days of fishing, 4 nights. Maybe we should just focus on like, we're going to be fishing, enjoying the lodge, right? Hanging out when we get there.
Yeah. I think the nice thing though about Island Park is while like maybe you do take a day, like a half day and you go in and see Old Faithful.
Right.
I wouldn't not do that. There's an app now that you can actually time when geysers are going off. So you can see like not just Old Faithful because it's going off every roughly 70 to, 80 minutes, right? It's kind of on an hour and a half schedule, give or take. But you might be able to see like one time we timed it just, the stars align. 7 different geyser, events in one like 3 hour period. Like it was just silly, right? And we have again 2 very young children that don't like to hang out a lot, and we did that with 2 kids in tow, right? So the last time we were up there just a week ago, we saw 2, so that was pretty depressing for us. But anybody else is like, oh my gosh, like this is so amazing, right? So we're kind of spoiled at this point. But so I wouldn't be. I would definitely look at your schedule and say, yeah, we're going to do an excursion into Old Faithful and see the lodge and see that area. It's about an hour and a half drive, barring any Buffalo traffic jams or just the congestion of summer, right? That can happen.
That's right. What are the tips on the summer if because people will be going there, listening now probably throughout the year. And when it's really busy, what's the tip on getting into the park? Do you just get there really early?
Get in crazy early, yeah, just like fishing, right? Like you got to get, and the animals don't like the heat, right? They're in big fur coats walking around. So if you want to see stuff, you time it. I'm a huge fan of spring and fall for the animal seeing, right? And so I preach that as people talk to me, and I'm like, just do 2 trips. Do your fishing trip, right? Your summer trip, right?
That's right.
And then, do a Mother's Day trip, do an early spring trip. The park's empty. You get the place to yourself, do a later fall trip. Hear the elk bugling, right? Like that's where we're going into the rut and the elk bugling and stuff.
God, that'd be cool. So the park's empty. So that's one of the things when you're out there. I mean, if you're camping, obviously with snow stuff, but that's the cool thing about your place is that it could be nasty out there.
You just,
Yeah.
You're in your car and then, you put your umbrella out or you got your, hoodie or whatever. And I mean, again, like with your guests, right? Like you're silly if you don't pack a raincoat and a sweatshirt even in July.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely, right? Because we can have snow pretty much any of the 12 months of the year, right?
Right.
Now, what will it likely be? It'll likely be in the 80s and very comfortable. But as soon as the sun goes down, you lose 20 degrees. Another, hour or two, by midnight, you're typically in the mid 40s to low 50s is kind of your average temperature, in the summertime. So it's nice, you jump in that hot tub, you just relax the bones, right? You're sipping your favorite cocktail or, your rum and Coke or whatever it is, right? And, for me, it's just a Sprite, I'm pretty simple. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
You can still make a mean drink if you need it, no big deal. But that's the neat thing though about Island Park is you're away from the congestion, but you're really easily accessed into it, right? Even like I said to Jackson Hole, it's an hour and a half drive. You can be in the heart of Jackson Hole, go to the cowboy, $1 million cowboy bar or wherever you wanted to go your whole life. In Island Park itself, like I said, you've got Big Springs, you've got Harriman State Park, and again a bunch of really like little places. You can go up to the warm springs where the spring just comes out of the side of the mountain basically. The Corps of Engineers tried to tap it, so it's like coming out of a big conduit now.
Oh, really?
And but again, it's where it came out. They just were trying to figure out a way to make it power and never did. Like we do, right? And so that history is all there. And so if you get a dry spot, you're like, well, there's only like a million things we could go see that aren't fishing. So I think that's the beauty of the place is you'll be able to do a lot within 5-10 minute drive. You can see some pretty iconic things just in Island Park. And so as we have guests that come back, they're like, well, what else is there? I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you'll never get bored. There's I mean, even in the wintertime, there's almost 500 miles of snowmobile trails that are great.
Oh, right. Yeah. So in the wintertime, people are staying at your lodge throughout the winter too, throughout the whole year.
Yeah, we're open year round. The snowmobiling starts up about mid-December and typically goes through mid-March. Our busy time is when the park's open. Yellowstone's still the big draw.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So July is a busy time for you guys.
and then and years ago they opened up most of the river section and the lakes to year-round fishing, so there is a lot more now. The winter up there is big, like you have big snow, so getting to water is definitely a
Yeah.
task and whatnot. So
What is the closest resort? The one that you're skiing?
so Targhee is the closest, right? Grand Targhee, they're just on the other side of the Idaho border, but on the Idaho side of the Tetons. And then you're about another half hour to get to Jackson, and about the same if you went up to Big Sky. And then Yellowstone Club's right next to Big Sky and Moonlight Basin. That's kind of a Big Sky, an appendage on the north side there. So those are the three big ones. Cool fact though, Alf Engen, who is the iconic Alta guru, he established Alta basically. He did lay out a little ski area called Bear Gulch, and it's right at the bottom of the upper and lower Mesa Falls as the river, the Henry's Fork drops basically down to the Ashton Plateau, right? And through Ashton and St. Anthony, the more of the South Fork, as you're going down, there's this little gulch, right? And they put you stopped, so you got off the train and you walked over basically, and you skied from the top of it down. So the bottom of the lift brought you back up basically out of the gulch. So there is, it's defunct. It was only I think it only ran for a few years, but in the 50s there was another little ski resort right there. So and then there's a platitude of backcountry opportunities. So.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. And we've talked about a little bit of that, over the last few months on all the opportunities out there. So this is great. Nice, Corby. Well, I think we've given a little insight on what you offer. Anything else you want to, give a shed light on anything we missed today that just paints the picture of what you have going there or the area?
No, we appreciate the conversation. It's hard to, until you're there, it's hard to put it in pictures, but I always say this line. It's from Funny Farm with Chevy Chase, right? And
nice.
Sell the house. And he's like, cue the deer, right? And the deer go running out, right? And,
right.
And it's like all over the place. Like cue just anything you think about the great outdoors, right? Anything that your inner child, or your adult. I'm in this cubicle and I just got to get free, or if you're just like, I mean, again, mountain people, like people that live in the mountains, you go there and you're like, dang, this is something, unique. And so we appreciate that your guests and your followers are going to be looking us up and have another place in that area and another reason to maybe, make that journey. I just, nobody comes and says, oh man, should have done something else.
No, nobody's disappointed to come there, right?
I think that's what really is neat about it is, and again, it's, as I talk to you, I rekindle the things that I take for granted a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And
this is sweet.
Being that steward, but yeah, I think we've covered the idea. And if this doesn't get somebody out there going, oh man, I need to make that reservation, then I don't know what will.
we're fired up. We'll send everybody out to, like we said at the start, pinesislandpark.com, and they can take a deeper dive into it. And if they have questions, they can reach out to you. And but this is great, Corey. I'm excited for the trip. It's going to be right around the corner for us, and it will be great to meet you in person and see you there, and just stay in touch. And thanks again for all the time today.
Absolute pleasure.
That's a wrap on Traveled, part of the Wet Fly Swing podcast and Swing Outdoors. This podcast was supported by Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory. You can support this podcast and Eastern Idaho by heading over to wetflyswing.com/Teton right now, and you can let any of the brands know that you found them through this podcast and click in there and check out all the great brands. We've had a number of them on this podcast, and we would love you to find out all the good stuff they have going. You can also check in with me anytime, Dave at wetflyswing.com, if you have any questions or feedback or have an idea of where we should be traveling to next. And one big reminder before we get out of here, the Stillwater School is going right now. If you go to wetflyswing.com/Stillwater School, you can find out if we have any slots available for the big trip out to this part of eastern Idaho. Phil Roy is going to be our guru. He's going to be breaking out the Stillwater magic. And if you wanted to up your game this year, this is your best chance right now. You can check in there or send me an email. Like I said, Dave at wetflyswing.com. And as we roll out of here, I just want to thank you for taking the time today to check out the Traveled podcast. And I appreciate you for your support and all the listens here. And I hope you have a chance to experience that road less traveled.